Hey, Ask a Christian is back. Hey, I'm Amy Register with Ask a Christian. This is an authentic channel that is super boring because, I'm really dedicated to seeing both sides of an issue and answering with nuance. And I'm not trying to make people mad at each other. That's why it's super boring. Today, I have a really fun question about reincarnation and how it might be compatible with Christianity. I have childcare for a few minutes. And so if my baby busts up in here, I'm just going to try to continue. But you'll know if you see her how precious she is. Let me read this email. We'll call this person Jay so as to not expose her if she doesn't want to be exposed. And if you want me to answer your question via email and maybe choose one to highlight for video, you can email me at askachristianfriend@gmail.com. Okay. This says, so I'm a Christian and belong to a church. I should ask my pastor about this, but I feel kind of embarrassed. Thank you for trusting me. I love these kinds of questions. I love ones that maybe other people would get upset or weirded out about. That's not me. I like exploring these things. So I was scrolling through Instagram and came across some mediums or psychics, and they talked about a lot about reincarnation, soul families, soul contracts, etc. I've seen a few different ones and they all say the same thing. I definitely got it in my head and can't get it out. What if we do reincarnate? What does that mean for heaven? It almost seems like my purpose here on earth is negated because what does it matter? I'm just going to come and do it again. We'll talk about that. That is definitely one of the objections. I don't know. In some ways, I feel like it's the devil trying to pull me away from God. I just feel bad about the thought of reincarnation and my beliefs about God and heaven. I don't necessarily think it's the devil trying to pull you away from God. At least not explicitly. There are so many different philosophies about life, and many of them have merit, or at least some merit. And so exploring them is, I don't come from the party where people think like, oh, it's so dangerous if you even think outside of Christianity. I think Christianity is dangerous if you don't think about it. So forgive me, the fan is blowing my hair every which way. So I formulated a response here to Jay, and I'm going to mostly read it, but we'll have some commentary on the side. And those of you who watch this live or watch this afterwards, you probably know more about reincarnation than I do. I actually have not read a ton about it. So this is just my thoughts thinking through some of Jay's questions. So let's go and check this out. Let me see. Accidentally closed the page. Okay. Yes, this is a whole situation. You have a lot of thoughts here. And first of all, if you, Jay, or you who are watching, come from a Christian tradition where you believe that when you die, you're a separate conscious soul separates from your body and goes up to heaven, I could see how reincarnation might work along with that. So if you believe that there's a disembodied spirit that goes on living, thinking, making choices, reincarnation can seem congruent. However, spoiler alert, I don't believe that's what the Bible teaches, and I don't think that's what the Bible's original audience believed. We're going to address that later. First, let's talk about if you do want to believe in a separate soul that goes on living and thinking and making decisions after your body passes away. What keeps you as a Christian from embracing that idea? What makes reincarnation against Christianity, or so that it doesn't work with Christianity? Okay, let's have a couple Bible verses and a little discussion here. For one, Hebrews 9:27-28 says, just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes the judgment. That's just one example, but in the Bible, it seems that in the Bible's view of things, particularly clear in the New Testament, it seems that the Bible's model of life and death is that man lives once and dies. So in that way, reincarnation would be incompatible. And of course, there are ways to kind of shimmy around that. And there are other texts that make it nuanced and questionable. So if you're wondering if that's like the be all end all verse, it's not. That's just some scholars believe that it's just completely incongruent with the Bible's view of life and death. That's not the strongest argument. Here's a stronger argument. Since we believe in a final judgment of people's characters by God, it muddies the water to think about reincarnation. Think about this. Say that somebody lives a couple lifetimes following after God, or at least seeking after truth as they know it. And then let's say in some of this person's lifetimes, they completely reject God and they experiment with going their own way, or even dabbling in what it means to be evil. How then would God judge that person? By which life would they choose? So it seems to muddy the water on whether or not somebody is living that other-centered life of love that is required for people to, I mean, that's what following Jesus results in. That's, it's not, I'm not saying it's works-based. I'm just saying if you are seeking to follow after Jesus, you're going to be living an other-centered life of love. And how would God decide which of your lives was worthy of saving, I guess. Anyway, okay. So that's another argument. The argument against reincarnation that makes the most sense to me is this, number 3, it removes the need for Christ's redemptive sacrifices. In most religions or philosophies, reincarnation is the path that you would use to eventually get enlightenment or nirvana, svarga, paradise, heaven, whatever you want to call it, the most blissful experience. You get there by the work you do yourself here on earth. You're responsible for learning and achieving and getting to heaven. And that's not compatible with Christianity. In Christianity, it's Christ's work, Christ's sacrifice, Christ's redemptive love that saves us and gets us to the place where we actually want to live out those principles. But it's not our works that get us there. It's Jesus is the be all and end all. So reincarnation goes against that. Yeah, it's only by his merit that you enter into his perfect community. You could live a million lifetimes and never rid yourself personally of selfishness. It's not something that we can do. We can practice it, but we still have those bents, those kernels, those self-interests. Yeah. So you have to decide whether it makes sense for you that you're going to work your way to heaven, or whether you are going to accept Christ's gift and sacrifice. And then, because of that goodness, be interested in heaven. All right. This is kind of part 2. Jay, you talk about soul contracts or families. This is the part where I had really not read very much about it. And you're right. I've been on TikTok or Instagram and had some of the live videos come up where people are doing tarot card readings or whatever. And I've heard it too. And I'm not even looking for it. It just seems really prevalent. And you ask, why are all of them thinking or doing kind of the same thing? I don't know. It's like a really popular idea right now is all I can come up with. It's certainly not new. May have been refreshed by somebody, but it's really popular, and it can feel really good. It can make a lot of sense to your heart to think that I'm in this relationship, or maybe this really difficult person, maybe I contracted with them in a previous life, or before this life, so that I could work on myself. Apparently it's something I need. So it's kind of a good idea in the fact that you say, maybe this is good for me and it's something I need, but that doesn't necessarily make it true. So maybe I should back up for a quick second. In the concept of reincarnation, soul contracts, from what I can tell, seem to be agreements that you made with other souls, disembodied souls, before you came to earth, so that you would incarnate on earth in the same time period, in the same location to experience certain challenges, emotions, situations together so that you could learn. And this would advance your spirituality. The people with whom you engage in these contracts would be called your soul family. This is my understanding. You guys can correct me if I'm not right. I thought a lot about this. My biggest critique of these ideas is that it takes a lot of mental energy then to decide if somebody's in your life because you need them there. Like, for example, my toddler is not very good at sleeping. So I am not going to get rid of my toddler out of my life. And it makes sense to say, like, she's probably here because some soul and I agreed somewhere else that I needed to work on my patience and that I valued sleep too much. And so this is a way of testing me and making me stronger. So I can see how that's appealing with people who are in your life. But it takes so much energy up if it's somebody who's actually wounding you or hurting you, and you're trying to figure out, like, is getting rid of this relationship good or bad for my life? What about for that person? Like, is me bowing out of this relationship going to leave them in a spiritual detrimental place that they won't be able to recover from? Am I sending them back a level spiritually? And so there's a lot of added discomfort if you really take this stuff to heart. Another critique is that it doesn't, again, with like how God chooses to accept people into heaven, it does not seem defensible for God to save or end the existence of people. So to make it clearer, if God is looking at your life or this person who's playing a role in your life, it doesn't seem like God could choose to save or let sin destroy them if they're all just playing roles to benefit someone else, even in their own minds. For example, this is a really extreme idea, but what if there was like a Hitler type person and someone agreed to play that role because they needed to understand what it was like to be a persecutor, a mass persecutor, because maybe in another life they were a victim. And so they needed to understand the humanity. How then would God judge this Hitler type character? So that's why it seems difficult to be congruent with Christianity. Okay, we're getting really into the weeds here. Finally, Jay, you asked what reincarnation would mean for heaven. Here's where I take a little bit of a spin from traditional Christianity, perhaps. People talk a lot about heaven as if it's our final and most joyous destination. I don't believe that the Bible teaches that. It seems like after a time period in heaven, we come back to the earth made new and we will live there. We'll be in heaven so that we can be close to Jesus, so that we can ask questions, and so that we can avoid the fire that cleanses the earth and makes it new. But ultimately, we are meant to return to this earth and have perfect, beautiful friendships and relationships, the same life that Adam and Eve would have had they not fallen. So ultimately, we return to earth. And this is totally incompatible with the goals of reincarnation. Like, Christianity was such an amazing opposing force to the Greek religions that were popular in their time. There was a school of thought that the body and the earth were evil and bad, and that being physical was evil and bad, and that the spirit was good. But Jesus affirmed that both the essence of us, the things that we can't touch, and the things that we can, the physicality, are beautiful and meant to be. And so we are supposed to return to this earth. We are supposed to be in physical relationships with people and things and with God even. And that's just not the case in reincarnation. I want to read to you a beautiful passage in Revelation. This is 21:21. It says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth had passed away. There was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things have passed away." When you read this verse, you can see how reincarnation is not compatible with this idea that we are not to treasure sadness and mourning, sickness, or death. In reincarnation, you actually need those things for humans to advance spiritually. But in Christianity, it says that these were not part of the original plan, they are deviation. And so, yeah, you can see how they don't go together. That's pretty much it for the things that you asked. Quick moment of bonus time here. Yes, the idea of soul consciousness after death. It's not a new idea by any means. It's been around as long as there are more than 3 people, it seems like. But um, the idea that a soul is conscious apart from the living body does not seem to be what God's people originally believed. While there are a couple ambiguous verses, the great body of text of the Bible suggests that our bodies plus the spirit or life breath of God is what makes us a soul. In other words, our physical shell plus the spark of life that God has given makes us a soul. We are a soul. We don't have a separate soul. Again, there are some ambiguous verses. We can talk about it later, what those are, and how we got off track. But that's actually it's still early in Christianity, but that's a later idea for God's people, and then people got it and ran with it because it benefited them, I believe. You can do your own research on that. But what this would mean for our discussion is that we souls, remain in the grave, sleeping until Jesus comes. We do not have a separate soul with its own brain that acts on behalf or apart from our physical body. There would be no opportunity in this idea for reincarnation. There's no soul to make any decisions to become anything else. And God's not doing it. So more and more scholars are starting to take note of this original teaching, and I find it compelling for a number of reasons. I'm not going to take time to share here. But yes, this seems to be what the original audience, the Hebrews and early Christians, believed until some of the Greek ideas took a foothold in the early Christian church. So again, that just a summary of that is that if we are basically sleeping in the grave until Jesus comes, if we have no conscious awareness of what's going on, then that takes away the opportunity for reincarnation. All right, super detailed, super long discussion, and I hope that helps a little bit. And again, if you've got questions that you would like me to answer via email and maybe choose for making live here, you can email me at askachristianfriend@gmail.com. And I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.